Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of The Spark. I'm Coach David. I hope you're doing fantastic on today. I hope everything is moving in the right direction for you and that you are up and at 'em. I am so happy that you have decided to spend this time with me on today, where I believe I'm going to share something with you that's going to take you to another level. I always believe that. I believe that what we're inspired to give you is going to inspire you to move to your next level. So, with that being said, today I'm going to talk about habits. Yes, that's right. What do your habits say about you? In other words, these habits that you have, what are they saying about you outwardly? What are they saying about you inwardly? What are they producing in your life? You know, the old adage going is that we are creatures of habit. Okay. So, in other words, the habits are what have designed us and brought us to the state we are. And truly, that is the very truth. But all even more so, here's the key thing that I want you to get. First, you make your habits. Then, after you make your habits make you. And so, with that being said, I want to go into this and I want to get an understanding of what a habit is. And then we want to talk about it from the standpoint because you've heard this before, good habits versus bad habits. And really you're the determining factor in that. Although we can look at some things and we can say, you know, this person has this habit and that is a destructive type of habit, but you have to be the determining factor in that. So, with that being said, I want you to know that your habits are the compounding interest of your self improvement. So, if you're looking to improve yourself, if you're looking to be better on tomorrow than you were today, we have to take a look at our habits. We've got to work on them. We got to make sure that they're leading us in the direction that we want to go. So, what is a habit? All right. Simple definition of a habit, it is a usual way of behaving. That's all it is. It's your behavior. And what actually happens is that on a regular and ongoing basis, we repeat over and over and over again the same thing to the degree that it becomes unconscious operation. And that is all a habit is. Now, I want to talk about a few things about habits. Number one, you do need them in order to function in life. Think about it from this standpoint. What if you had to everything, you had to sit down and think the process through over and over every time you got ready to do something, every time you got up in the morning and you got dressed, you had to really sit down and think that process over and over and over and over again. You would just wear yourself out going through that process. So a habit can be a good thing because you got to have them in order to function in life. Now, this is a key point that most people don't understand about habits. Number one, habits are physical, the physical things that we do. Habits are emotional, our emotional reaction to things. And also, habits are mental, the way we think over and over and over and over way again. Here's the key point though. Some of our habits are very, very useful. Let me give you an example. Say, for instance, getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. If that's your habit, that's a very usual and good habit. Why? Because we do it every morning when we get up in order to deal with what's happening in our mouth overnight. It's one of those good habits. And so, you know, that's a useful habit. Washing your clothes. Like I tell some of the kids that I work with, I said, if you don't wash your clothes on an ongoing basis, you lose a lot of friends. So it is a good habit to have the habit of brushing your teeth, washing your face, washing your clothes. Those are very good habits. But on the other side of that coin, habits can be destructive, like the habit of drinking too much. And so, you know, you're drinking alcohol. I'm talking about drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. That can be a destructive habit. Well, why do I say that? Because it breaks down your body. It also doesn't, it takes you, it helps you escape reality that you got to come right back to. This can be destructive in so many different ways. It's been proven that alcoholism has torn up families, has destroyed lives, it's caused people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So that habit can be a destructive habit. So we got to understand that we got both good habits, positive ones, negative ones. We got negative habits that tear us down and break us apart. Now, here's something else. You can change your habits. You can modify it. They say you can break a habit. But the thing that's so important about understanding your habits is this right here. Before you can ever modify, change, break, realign, whatever you want to call it, before you ever can do that, you've got to admit that the habit exists. That's why, different places that help people break bad habits, the first thing you stand up and say is, I am this. And so what they're teaching you is that, yes, the habit exists. Yes, I recognize that it exists. And so now I can do something about it. Until you're willing to admit that you have this habit and you say, hey, look, I know I got this, you cannot change it. You cannot modify it. You cannot break it. So I want to encourage you. Now, I'm not the doom and gloom guy. I'm always about positive input and doing all the positive things that we need to do. But the truth of the matter is, in order to modify or change or break a habit, you've got to admit that this habit exists. Once you admit it, now we can deal with it. Oh boy. Now, I said before, you can change, you can modify, you can break a habit. Yes, you can. Some people say you can't. I say you can. And today we're going to talk about and we're going to deal with just how to do that. Now, before I even begin this, the number one thing that I want to say about changing your habits is you've got to believe that change is possible. You've got to believe that. Here's the thing about it. If you're of the group that says, hey, look, a habit is a habit and you can't do anything about it, you just got to learn to accept it and live with it, then you don't believe it can change. So if you don't believe it can change, it is never going to change for you. You have to get down on the inside of you where it really matters, the core of you, the very core of you, and say, you know what? This is a habit. It is a destructive habit, and I can change it. I believe that change is possible for me. That's the first thing you have to do. So now that I've admitted that I have this habit, now I believe that change is possible for me. The next thing I got to do, I got to look at what caused this habit to develop. What caused this in the first place? When did I start to do this type of habit in the first place? It could be societal. It could be from your family. It could be a lot of different things, but you've got to look at that in order to move forward. You got to kind of see what's the root of this. In other words, I'm not looking at the leaves on the tree. I'm looking at the very root of this, and I'm saying, okay, this is the root of what caused me to develop this habit. Now, developing the habit, I understand that something sparked it, something caused it to grow. It's just a little root, but that's where it is, and that's where everything starts from. So now that I've done that, I've admitted that I have it. I know that it's possible for change. I've kind of dealt with and looked at this is what caused this to happen. The next thing I got to do is deal with the consequences of my current habits to endure the challenge of change. I'm going to say that again because that's a lot. Okay, you understand that I got to deal with the consequences of my current habit to endure the challenge of change. What do I mean? Change is not change until you have change. I have to understand that when I get ready to start changing, modifying, breaking habits, there's going to be some pain to endure. Let's say, for instance, you're in the habit of eating a bag of Lay's potato chips every day after work. Now, you like the saltiness of it, you like the crunch of it, you like the taste of it. There's going to be a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of pain when you say, I'm not doing that anymore. Just like me. The other day, I recognized that I had gotten off on some things that used to be very good habits for me. But it caused me pain to look at that and say, you got to get back on it. You have got to start doing the things that you know you've got to do. There's going to be something to endure from this challenge of change. That's what I like to call it, the challenge of change. And there's going to be something that you're going to have to endure. You might as well deal with it. You might as well face it and say, you know what? Even with that, I understand this. I'm still going forward. Now, here's the another piece you got to add to that. The next thing is you should never attempt to modify, never attempt to change, never attempt to break a habit, never attempt to do any of that unless you have something to replace it with. Here's why. This is a principle. Let's say, for instance, I come in and I look at my counter and I clean everything off of my counter. How many of you know that if I leave that blank, open, empty counter looking good, it won't be long before something else is going to show up there? And then I'll be like, well, wait a minute. I just cleaned off the counter. That's okay. You left a wide open, clean, open space. Something else is going to find its way there. And I'm not saying necessarily in that situation is a bad thing. I'm just letting you know that when you get ready to modify a habit, when you get ready to change a habit, when you get ready to break a habit, you had better have something to replace what you're removing. You better have something to replace it. Because if you don't, the habit is going to show back up, or even worse, something worse will show back up. So you've got to learn to remove. In order to remove, you've got to replace it. And when you do that, now things start to get better. Here's a perfect example. Let's say, for instance, I'm used to just coming home, crashing out, vegetating in front of the television. So I said, I ain't doing that no more. So I'm going to remove vegetating in front of the television. Well, let me ask you a question. David, what are you going to remove from? What are you going to replace it with? Because if you don't have something to replace it with, like, hey, instead of vegetating in front of the television, I'm going to go get on a treadmill. Instead of vegetating in front of the television, I'm going to go for a walk. Instead of vegetating in front of the television, I'm going to sit down and read. If I don't have something to replace what I removed, then I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs. And before you know it, guess what? I'm not only in front of the television, I'm in front of the computer screen, surfing the internet and doing every other thing except for what I intended to do. So find something to replace what you remove. Now, I'm just giving you several steps just to help you modify, change, or break a habit. Number one, you got to admit that it's there. Number two, you've got to know that change is possible. Number three, you got to look at it and say, what causes to happen to begin with? Number four, you got to say, hey, there's going to be some temporary pain. I got to understand what the challenge of my change is. And number five, I've got to remove it, but I got to replace it. Boy, that's good. That is good stuff. All right, so here's what I want to wrap up with. I want to give you the greatest habit that you can have. You ready for this? The greatest habit you can have is to learn to accept yourself the way you are while you're on your way to improving the things that need to be improved. And remember what I said from the very beginning. You get to determine that. The greatest habit that you can have is to love yourself, is to accept yourself. I'm telling you, if you'll learn to do that, then you're going to be okay, because you're going to get where you need to get. Do not attempt to keep up with the Joneses or anyone else. Why? This is such a simple principle, but many people miss it. You are unique. There's only one set of the Joneses, and that's just a proverbial use of a term. There's only one set of Joneses, and they are unique. But guess what? There's only one you, and you're unique too. So don't live your life trying to keep up with what somebody said you ought to be, or some habits you ought to have. What you need to understand is that you determine who you are, because remember, you're the architect of your life. You get to determine who you are. You get to design who you are. You get to build who you are, because you got to live with who you are. So I hope that has helped you on today. What do your habits say about you? And I hope they're saying great things. But if not, Coach David has given you something to help you on your way. Listen, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you'll go back and watch this again. And I also hope you will share this with somebody. There's a lot of meat in there. And I want you to take it and I want you to start working with it. Because if you have habits like I do that need to be changed, modified, or broken, here's the steps to help you get there. And I hope that this has blessed you tremendously. Share this with somebody. Share it with a friend that needs help. Just share it in general on your social media. I certainly do appreciate that. Listen, until the next time, remember this right here. Remember this. You are the architect of your life. You're going to get to design it. You're going to build it, and you're going to live it. But most of all, remember this. I'm Coach David, and I believe in you. I'll see you next week. Bye.